Okay, good morning to everyone. It seems we have just reached the quorum so that we may be able to start. Okay, thank you. Again, good morning to everyone. Thank you for coming back here. And I'm very delighted to welcome all of you to this 26th LDCF and SCCF Council meetings. I just would like to maybe share with you my reflection about adaptation issue for the maybe last few months. I remember that at the last council meeting, the 25th LDCF SCCF council meeting, I talked to you that my reflection from Katowice COP, where I recognized or I felt that an adaptation is gaining momentum, the political momentum and attention from all over the world. I continue to see the same kind of upward moving, so adaptation continue to gain the momentum, and it's coming really rising to the center, to the global agenda. And from that point of view, I also would like to share with you my reflection of being a commissioner of GCA, Global Commission of the Adaptation, and would like to share with you maybe three thoughts I had by attending the last GCA meeting last month. So three thoughts. Number one, actually there is a very interesting framework being discussed at the GCA. That the framework was that there may be two groups of the action we can think of. One is that we continue to do some good thing and to do and more, to do and better of those kind of good things. But the second bucket of things is that we need to maybe to do new things and to do differently. So this kind of second bucket is capturing a lot of attention, and I think it reflects to the challenge going, actually becoming bigger and bigger on the ground. So there is a sense among the people that can we really catch up with a challenge, rising challenge, just by doing the same thing, the better and more. So I found this this aspiration to find a new way of doing business and to do things differently is very, very refreshing. The second thought coming from this GCA, Global Commission on Adaptation, is the need to think about scenario. When people, the community of the adaptation, talking about adaptation, we haven't really been clear that the assumption, underlying assumption, are we assuming that we were hoping to get into this 1.5 degree world, or are we quietly assuming that the world is going to 3.5 degree world? So these two scenarios will be very, very different, and the action to be taken under each of the scenario will be also very, very different. If I were, let's say, agriculture minister, I can't really have a two scenario, 1.5 scenario or 3.5 scenario. I just need one plan. So what is really the underlying assumption of the climate system for the next decade or so. So this scenario exercise is something very important, but not necessarily well thought through. I think this may be a time for us to do it. Then the last thing that I want to reflect and share with you is this need for this more long-term, more holistic, more systematic, a more integrated planning and approach, which will actually invite the very vibrant private sector engagement. One of the issues that why the private sector has not been that active yet is because it's the underlying kind of unpredictability which does prevent them from coming and investing in a big way. So that we have been reflecting this new way of doing much more long-term, much more systematic, holistic, then that predictable approach may actually help the much more vibrant and vigorous than private sector engagement in this agenda. By the way, in Katowice, the private sector has been absolutely upbeat, so they can continue to be upbeat. But then I think this longer term planning may help them. I hope them to come in. And so what does it mean to us that the LDCF, SCCF fund? As you may know, we are entering into the new way of doing business on our side too. And that we have moved to this batch system. So moving from a first come, first served basis, it has created already a lot of good opportunity for us to strategize our portfolio. And today you will hear from the team that what kind of a portfolio that we will be presenting for your approval. But just a quick snapshot is that this new way give us more opportunity to actually interact with governments, the countries and the communities more directly, and a lot of interaction I have seen, which creates much more strategic and strong portfolio. Maybe 2-3 good examples is that now we are presenting several multi-trust fund and trust fund, the coordination between GEF Main Trust Fund and LDCF, SCCF, and also that joint activity with other funds. So there are a lot of good examples of taking time and to do this new way of doing business. And I'm very happy to see that those coordination with other fund not only provide us with resilience benefit, but also the benefit from other areas like biodiversity or sustainable land management. You will hear this more in the session. Also, as I mentioned, this new way of doing business, that new momentum creates more opportunity to engage with the private sector. You will also hear today that what kind of interesting thing happening in our own portfolio. We will be soon launching this challenge and the program, which it will actually invite or motivate actually the more micro enterprise that doing and to encourage the micro enterprise to be more like an incubator or the new ideas from the ground. And soon I am very happy to introduce today's guest speaker, who is actually the CEO of the Europa League, who will tell us what kind of interesting are happening and how we can collaborate with them. So I will introduce her momentarily. But let me just finish by saying that it's really good time for the global community to create and strengthen this momentum which is coming from the ground. We have a very important event going forward, September SG Secretary General Climate Summit, and followed by COP in Chile. So that we really would like to accelerate our actions that are coming from the top, but also from the community. So that I hope that we will be actually joining this momentum and to help accelerate the action on the ground. Before closing, I also would like to thank a new contribution from the community. I think very recently we received an announcement from Ireland government that of €2 million to LDCF, so that we would like to formally acknowledge and thank the government of Ireland. So with that, let us get on the business. Thank you so much. So, Carola continued to be my co-chair for this session. I now hand over mic to Carola.
Thank you, Naoko, for introducing this meeting. I'd now like to propose that we adopt the agenda for this meeting. It has been distributed to you in advance. If there's no comments to the agenda, it is hereby adopted. And I hand the floor back to Naoko to introduce the next agenda item.
Thank you. The next item is actually the keynote speech, and I would like to invite the Osalia to the main table. Why don't you come here? Yeah, and she is the CEO and of this Europe or actually Europe Reinsurance Facility, and she is actually the old friend of ours, and so we came to know each other. But she will definitely tell us what are the opportunities we can do together by involving the working together with the private sector. So you are on, please.
Good morning. I have an unpronounceable name, Orsalia Kalantopoulos, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Europa Re, a catastrophe reinsurance company. I'm honored for the invitation to join you today here, and thank you very much. Southeastern Europe is highly vulnerable to natural disasters. 90% of the region is located within transboundary river basins, which makes the region extremely prone to floods. Before we started our work, climate risk insurance coverage among homeowners, small and medium enterprises, and farmers were almost non-existent in this region. Governments' financial resources are not and have not been able to absorb the growing adverse impacts of climate change and natural hazards on private property, businesses, and increasingly on municipal services. Unfortunately, market insurance solutions are also very costly to develop and require world-class expertise in numerous fields of insurance, most of them very esoteric. For example, risk modeling, actuarial science, information technology, claims management, product development, reinsurance, consumer protection, and regulation, a lot of which have proven to be very difficult for countries to develop or mobilize on their own, even developed countries, I should say. In 2009, 3 countries of the region, Albania, North Macedonia, and Serbia, created Europa Re Ltd, a Swiss-based reinsurance. Europa Re is licensed by the Swiss regulator, FINMA, since December 2013. Thanks to the GEF Scc F, and with also generous co-financing from the Swiss State Secretariat for Economic Affairs, SECO, since 2013, Europa Re has been able to make some strides in the area. We expanded private catastrophe and weather risk insurance coverage of homeowners, SMEs, and farmers, provided insurance for sovereigns and sub-sovereigns, and to socially vulnerable segments of the population exposed to natural disasters. We have jump-started local catastrophe insurance markets through the creation of country-specific risk models, regulatory frameworks, including risk-based insurance regulations, pricing and actuarial guidelines, and innovative, financially sound insurance and risk transfer products. We also introduced, this is quite important, a web-based automated pricing, underwriting, a policy origination platform that includes a modern damage assessment and claims management system. Another critical aspect of our impact is education and awareness campaigns for the insurance market, as well as the general population. By raising awareness of weather and climate risk among the public, we hope to enable behavioral change. For example, our open access website allows the public to view and inform themselves about the risk of natural hazard to their own property, as well as to the community facilities such as their schools and hospitals. The flood risk models that were developed with GEF grant funding served as the foundation for this tool, which estimates flood risk for individual properties within a 25-meter resolution. We go very, very close to the end result. Allow me to provide you a couple of real-life examples of our work. Thanks to your general startup support, Europa Re was able to provide immediate financial relief after significant flooding in the region in the last few years. In Macedonia, in 2017 and 2018, Europa Re indemnified individual farmers as well as SMEs for loss of yields in wheat, barley, and grapes. Also in Albania, we are helping a medium-sized enterprise for business interruption losses occurred also as a result of floods. In the course of our journey, of course, we have gathered a few lessons on climate risk insurance, which I would like to share very briefly here with you today. To be successful, projects pursuing catastrophe insurance solutions should develop a comprehensive catastrophe insurance market strategy. But even with comprehensive expert advice, there are some major challenges when we put in place a full-fledged operational market-based insurance program. What helps us was the turnkey tailored technical support received by the GEF and the World Bank, from product design to regulatory compliance and development of claim settlement systems. We at Europa Re have continually offered earmark reinsurance capacity for a fully integrated value chain. My third point is that for financial sustainability, insurance products must be priced to be attractive to the vulnerable people without government subsidies. And finally, the last but not least important lessons is that ongoing consultations and securing buy-in from all project shareholders, including the governments of participating countries, is key for success. Let me conclude by saying that I have read with great interest the new GEF programming strategy for adaptation, and I would like to thank the distinguished members of this Council for your commitment to support developing countries' effort to enhance their adaptive capacity through risk sharing and transfer mechanisms such as insurance, which has been recognized by the international community as an important aspect of adapting to climate change. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'll be here.
Yeah, because it's a great opportunity, do you have any questions or the comments for her? Okay, Marita, please.
Thank you very much. I represent Sweden here at the Council. I just have a couple of questions. I found your presentation very, very interesting. And first question is how your activities are financed. Second question is how you deal with the risk element, the high risk in the activities that you're involved in. I mean, what is your risk appetite and how is it dealt with? Thank you.
Okay, Stefan, please.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the presentation. An interesting topic. It's a new approach than the usual to adaptation, financing resilience against effects of climate change. So a little bit on the same line as my colleague from Sweden. You got some GEF funding in the beginning, you got some funding from Swiss ECO, but at one point these, because you're not a .org, you're a .com, I assume, means a for-profit business. So at one point these need to be self-sustained. How do you see the future? Are you already there? The second one, you made some comments, but maybe you could give a little bit more information on how is the take-up of the idea in the region of southeastern Europe, some of them coming out of the old communist days where they may have had other issues to deal with. So that would be interesting, because even though it's part of Europe, it's a part of Europe that is struggling with not only environmental issues, but also transformation and transitional issues. So thank you.
Yes, please.
We
Maybe I will get one more question. Kojura, please.
Just one short additional question to what Stefan has been asking. This approach is certainly a very interesting one, and we can imagine regions beyond the relatively wealthy area where you are being active in to be even a lot more in need of these kind of mechanisms. And as you're probably aware, Germany is working a lot on insurance, risk insurance in Africa. And I would just wonder, from your experience, what you believe would be the greatest challenges transferring your approach to a region like Africa, and what would be your proposals to tackle these?
Now I'm on.
Yes, you
Okay. Okay. First, as I said, we are a Swiss-based company, which means that we are regulated by the Swiss Financial Authority. We have a capital that the countries, through World Bank financing, originally put together. And we model our risks extensively, and these risks, our modeling work and how we price risk and we model risk is very, very closely looked at and regulated by FINMA. And this is very important in order to ensure our financial sustainability. We are able to we receive a premium on the basis of the reinsurance we provide, and while we are not fully financially sustainable right now, we expect that by the end of the next year we will be completely financially sustainable through the management of our existing capital, which is also invested in B+ bonds and above, and and the premium we receive. We have the region has not been easy to take up reinsurance, and now I'm among donors. I will make a bit of a difficult point for all of you. Some of the reasons is the reaction of the donors themselves. For example, following the major floods in Serbia in 2017, donors came in and provided funds, including some of our very dear supporters, and they provided funds to the people that did not have insurance, while the people that they were insured were excluded from these funds. And as a result, all these municipalities and the agricultural sector the next year did not see a reason why they should be buying insurance. So there has to be a great deal discipline among all actors, the countries, the populations, but also the donor community. I think that we have, we are very well managed, clearly, for a small company. So FINMA last year allowed us to operate beyond the countries of Southeast Europe that we had originally been allowed to operate. Now we operate, for example, in Turkey, and we have quite a lot of activity there. This allows us to increase our premium and do very well. I think this type of activity could be replicated easily in Africa at a small scale, provided there is financial discipline in the company, but also ensuring that a small farmer pays a small amount for the insurance coverage is being provided. And also, we know that if it's not just the individual farmer, but pooled at the sub-sovereign level for the municipality, the city, or a greater area, the possibility of financial sustainability of the overall scheme is much more increased. There are a lot of lessons that we've learned. I would be more than happy to discuss with you. We also have found out something that is quite important, that because the private sector comes in, the money that will be provided, the indemnities, go to the needy and not to the politically connected, while farmers move away from marginal lands where they should not have been, and these lands can be reforested or, could go to different uses. Thank you. I don't
Thank you
know,
so
I think
much.
I followed all the questions in some way or another, but I will be around and I could respond further.
Thank you so much, Osalia. It was really a great exchange, and appreciate. And
Thank you for the opportunity.
and then we'll continue to work with you. Thank you. So maybe we could just.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We can now move on to agenda items 4 and 5 of our meeting this morning. The progress report on the LDCF and the SCCF, and the fiscal year 18 annual monitoring review for both. And I'd like to invite Gustavo to make a brief presentation on the documents that have been distributed.
Thank you, Carola. Good morning to everybody. It's a pleasure to introduce to you the progress report on the LDCF and SCCF. And the report covers the period between November 2018 and April 2019. As of March 31st of 2019, the cumulative pledges of LDCF amounted to 1.4 billion. And of this resource, 1.35 billion, or 95%, had been paid, and $12 million of pledges to LDCF still remain outstanding. Funds for new project approvals amounts to 112 million, and 11 projects are requesting 100.6 million in resources from LDCF for the work program that's going to be considered later on in this session. During the reporting period from November 2018 to April 2019, approximately 41 million has been allocated from LDCF to 6 projects approved by December 2018 LDCF SCC Council. This was the first work program of the GEF 7 cycle. These projects are in Chad, Guinea-Bissau, Mauritania, Mozambique, Rwanda, and Sudan. In the reporting period, 9 agencies were involved in LDCF projects and programs. And UNDP is the agency that has the largest share of project funding decisions to date with 54%, followed by UN Environment with 14%, and African Development Bank with 10%. Other agencies involved are FAO, the World Bank, IFAD, Asian Development Bank, IUCN, and UNIDO. During the reporting period, newly approved projects are submitted by African Development Bank, UNDP, UNEP, and the World Bank. 11 LDCF projects totaling 60 million were endorsed by the CEO during this period in Burundi, Guinea, Mauritania, Rwanda, Lesotho, Senegal, Uganda, Mozambique, São Tomé e Príncipe, Malawi, and Guinea-Bissau. Total co-financing expected to be leveraged by these projects approximately 243 million in total. During the reporting period, 11 LDCF projects totaling 60 million were endorsed also by the CEO in Guinea, Burundi, Guinea-Bissau. Total co-financing is, I think I covered this one already. The progress report provides a summary of the expected portfolio level results. As of April 30, the reporting period, out of 156 out of 184 projects that were endorsed or approved by the CEO provide an estimation of the number of direct beneficiaries. As a result, the projects seek to directly reduce the vulnerability of more than 21 million people and place more than 3 million hectares of land under improved management to withstand negative effects of climate change. Given the mandate of the LDCF to support the preparation of the NAP process for LDCs, 84 LDCF projects are already supporting countries in these efforts, and in particular to integrate climate change adaptation into 228 national development plans and frameworks. The LDCF also assists countries in laying the groundwork for climate resilient development through 86 projects that will enable countries to strengthen their national hydromet and climate information services. The results for these projects are described in detail in the actual report. If you recall, when we started to develop the strategy for this period, one of the major needs was to look into how we could update the pipeline. So in order to do that, we continued to hold consultations with countries that had projects in the GEF 6 LDCF pipeline. And based on these consultations, 10 projects from the GEF 6 pipeline were rearticulated and resubmitted for LDCF support. Of these, 7 projects were technically cleared and are included in the June 2019 work program that's going to come for consideration. 4 countries are now refining their priorities and LDCF project submissions. Sudan has already 1 project approved in December of last year, and we are discussing other priorities. Again, more information on this consultation process is to be found in the actual report. Cumulative pledges to the SCCF amounted to 352.8 million. And of the total resources pledged, 99% has indeed been paid. To date, 353.87 million for 78 projects has been approved under the SCCF. And of the total resources approved, 293 million were under the Special Climate Change Fund Adaptation Program, while almost 61 million had been approved under the SCCF program for technology transfer. 52 out of 76 SCCF projects endorsed or approved provide an estimate of the number of direct beneficiaries. These projects aim to directly reduce vulnerability of some 6.9 million people. In addition, 33 SCCF projects are already supporting countries in their efforts to integrate climate change into adaptation and national development plans. With this, I conclude my introduction, and Carola, back to you, please.
Thank you, Gustavo, for your presentation. I'd like to now open the floor for comments and questions on both documents. Are there any questions or comments to be made? Jos, it's a great pleasure because you said yesterday that it was your last intervention, but I'm very happy to see you talk again.
Thank you. Good morning, colleagues. That was the GEF Council. And thanks for the update and the good information as usual. I have just a minor question. I think we are very happy with the fact that that sizable pipeline that was there is being addressed, and we see refurbishing of projects, updating, as a matter of fact. So far, are there any projects that cannot be recycled, that have not been, or do you think that there are cases that part of the pipeline will actually not be able to come forward because it's completely overtaken by events, outdated, or what have you? I see the work is going well, but just want to know if there's any of those kind possibilities at least. Thank you.
Thank you, Jos. I'd like to give the floor to Cordula, please.
Thank you, Gustavo, for the report, which I find very interesting and encouraging, and we very much welcome that the progress from the first come, first serve basis that we used to have in the LDCF to this programming approach seems to be smooth. I hope it's not only that it seems to be, that it actually is smooth. I think what Jos just asked for would also be interesting for us. We particularly appreciate the support to the NAP process and the efforts to adaptation to climate change. But we also believe that now that the system has been reformed, we should make more outreach about what we are doing with the LDCF. Because this is where we wanted to get more funding again, and so we need to talk about what we are doing, and these are good things, and I think there's context coming up. Naoko was citing the Adaptation Commission at several moments. We're also approaching the UN Secretary General Summit, and we should use these opportunities to make a bit of publicity for these funds and instruments that we believe are very important in order to help them to be sustained.
Thank you, Cordula. Stefan and then Marita.
Thank you, Carola. Cordula just took the words out of my mouth. It's two fine funds that we have with the LDCF and the SCCF, and by those countries that benefited from LDCF and SCCF funding, they are very much appreciated. Of course, it's not the big size funds. It's not the GCF. It's not the GEF Trust Fund. But the work that is done, and especially the LDCF that has a focus on the least developed countries, makes it unique and perhaps something to the GEF communication to not forget the LDCF and SCCF. We know there's always a little bit of a looming danger that they may disappear because they are too small in the eyes of some people, too small to continue, and they could be rationalized into something bigger. We all know that from mergers and acquisition, it's not necessarily always more efficient and more effective to have these smaller units disappearing, because they have a specific niche and profile, and that one should be appropriately communicated. The people I meet in the corridors of UNFCCC that have been working with the LDCF and SCCF, they have a great appreciation for it. It's an asset in this day and age. Thank you.
Hear, hear. Marita, please.
Thank you, Co-Chair. It's always a pleasure, I think, to listen to the progress report on the LDCF, because there are new steps now, at least since last year. I mean, we are very pleased that you're taking forward the adaptation strategy. And a lot of what Cordula said, I can fully agree to on the NAP question and the process and the support to the development countries, and also on the outreach. I think you would be useful to do more outreach for the work that you are doing. I think LDCF and also SCCF play a very important role in the adaptation space, and we need to increase the focus on adaptation. I just had a question on for the next report. I think it would be welcome from our side, at least, to better illustrate or explain how you have integrated gender in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to give the floor back to Gustavo to respond, but not before Jos has made his last point.
Sorry, it's not that I always want to have the last word, but I, actually, the colleagues here have reminded. It's interesting to see that we're talking all of a sudden about more outreach for the LDCF since we have a work program, right? I think it's a good indication, because we had this rolling approval of and we never saw things like now we can and go and tie back to the programs before and so that's one point, and of course I mean I also hear a lot of good, especially from the LDCF. I was reading quickly, but in the study on the completed projects, which is an information document. So SCC, or does that come later? So SCCF is well vested for innovation, and it seems to be performing well. There's uncertainties and so on. Yet it doesn't receive a lot of support. I mean, my country is to blame also, because we used to donate to both, but then when resources get smaller, then the priority is LDCs. But so maybe in the outreach, it's an element to take up. And my final point that I actually forgot to mention in my first intervention is with regard to NAPs, and thanks to the colleagues, Marita and Cordula, who reminded us. There's going a lot of, fair amount of support, and that's good, to the NAP process. Are you clear with the GCF on this, on division of task? Because since they have a big 50% rule on adaptation, I was just wondering if there's overlaps, and how, and if not, how you're avoiding them, because it may become blurry. All right, thanks.
Merci, et finalement, la France, Stéphanie, s'il vous plaît.
France, Stephanie. Thank you, Madam Chair. I should like to abound and actually fully agree with my colleagues as to the importance. I'll just give you some time to put your headsets on. I just wanted to say I fully agree with my colleagues as to the significance of these two funds. And France is very satisfied with these funds, and it is important, therefore, to communicate on these funds and also to mention the results of the projects, LDCF and SCCF projects, because in the next few years we will be able to add value, greater value to these funds, and these are very important funds for the countries. And her microphone has just been turned off, unfortunately. Thank you. I didn't hear the rest.
But I think also to Chizuru to present the annual review.
Want to do
We're just waiting for the presentation to be put on the screen.
Okay, good morning, colleagues. On behalf of the Secretariat, I would like to present the Fiscal Year 18 Annual Monitoring Review of the LDCF and SCCF projects. The review describes the performance and the results of, as well as the lessons learned from the portfolio of projects and programs that are financed under the LDCF and SCCF that have begun implementation on or before June 30th, 2017, and those projects that were under implementation during at least part of the fiscal year 2018. So of the portfolio and of those that will fall under that category, we received the reports and we did the analysis. The document further provides information on management effectiveness and efficiency as it relates to the LDCF and SCCF in the form of lessons learned. So this is a snapshot of the active portfolio of the LDCF. Gustavo just gave a presentation, and there are actually 271 LDCF projects that have been approved. In this AMR annual monitoring exercise, we looked at 87 projects. So that's about, I would say, slightly less than 1/3 of the total approved projects, with total LDCF funding commitments of $549 million, and with $2.4 billion in confirmed co-financing. Of these projects, $231.6 million of project grants had been disbursed as of June 30th of 2018. And that basically translates to about half of all the committed project grants for these set of projects. There are 71% of the projects in Africa and 27% of projects in Asia and Pacific. And just to note, 119 million of the active portfolio allocation has been made to the LDC SIDS. Looking at the performance, we typically look at performance through two indicators. One is the performance ratings related to implementation progress. The other one is the performance related to development objectives. And as you can see at the portfolio level, 87% of the LDCF projects rated moderately satisfactory or higher in terms of their progress towards development objectives. In terms of implementation progress, 80% of the projects reported back moderate satisfactory or higher in terms of that particular performance rating. So you can also see that about 50% of the projects actually did report satisfactory performance ratings. Now moving on to the achieved results. As of June 30th, 2018, cumulative results of the LDCF portfolio already included more than 15 million of direct beneficiaries and over 426,000 people trained in various aspects of climate change adaptation. Through LDCF finance projects, an estimated 1.7 million hectares of land have been brought under more resilient management practices, and moreover, 200 regional, national, sector-wide policies, plans, and frameworks in LDCs had been strengthened and or developed to better address climate change risks and adaptation concerns. Moving on to the SCCF active portfolio, in total, there are 78 projects that have received support from the SCCF. The exercise presented here, we looked at 34 projects. So that's about slightly more than 1/3 of the portfolio, total portfolio. Of that 34 projects, there is a total SCCF funding commitment of $161 million with confirmed co-financing of $1.1 billion. $50 million in project grants have been disbursed as of June 30th of 2018, and that's approximately 35% of committed project grants. There is much more variety and distribution in terms of regions covered because this is an SCCF as opposed to the LDCF. 32% in Asia and Pacific, 23% in Africa, 22% in Europe and Central Asia, and 17% in Latin America and the Caribbean regions. and about 18% or 28 million of the SCCF resources from this portfolio and cohort projects had gone to SIDS. Again, looking at the performance ratings on the implementation progress and development objectives, 94% of the projects had ratings of moderately satisfactory or higher in terms of the development objectives, and 87% of projects rated moderately satisfactory or higher in terms of implementation progress. Moving on to the achieved results. As of June 30th of 2018, cumulative results of the SCCF portfolio included more than 5.7 million direct beneficiaries and over 54,000 people trained in various aspects of climate change adaptation. Through SCCF finance projects, an estimated 5.8 million hectares of land had been brought under more resilient management practices, and 150 regional, national, and sector-wide policies, plans, and frameworks in vulnerable developing countries has been strengthened or developed to better address climate change risks and adaptation concerns. So, based on this analysis, we have distilled some lessons learned from the field, and I don't think there are any big surprises to this list. The very first one is the capacity building and convening of inter-ministerial cooperation platforms can be quite beneficial to facilitate and multiply impact of implementation of various adaptation techniques as well as practices. The second lesson that has emerged is that unclear execution arrangements, including coordination among agencies, can sometimes have detrimental impacts on project implementation in terms of quality and also speed. Strong support for national agriculture research councils can help climate change adaptation projects in the agriculture sector succeed by utilizing tailored local solutions. Of the portfolio projects that we looked at, there was quite a number of agriculture-related projects. So this is one of the common lessons that has been distilled from that sub-cohort of projects looking into agriculture-related activities. Lack of high-level political buy-in can require project restructuring during implementation, and we've seen this actually emerge in a number of projects that did not have very good implementation ratings. Projects that mainstream adaptation into local national development planning in the agriculture sector are likely to catalyze private sector co-financing in the course of implementation. And finally, project implementation delays represent a frequent phenomena causing low ratings and can sometimes not be avoided due to unforeseen circumstances. So that is the summary of the AMR presented this year, and we'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe now first, Gustavo, you want to respond to the round of questions, or do you want to gather some more first?
It's probably useful to go around,
Yeah.
and then we can respond together.
Yeah. Are there any additional questions relating to the presentation of the annual review that Chizuru just made to us? Ludovica, please, and then Jos.
Thank you very much. Very interesting presentation, and appreciate the good performance and implementation rate. Just a question. I see that there are some achieved results. I don't understand very well which is the baseline and which is the target, because I mean, this is a very important factor when you go to see the results achieved. Thank you.
Jos, and then Julian.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks for the report. I had a specific question. I mean, we're very pleased to see that, as you state in paragraph 36, that the majority of projects recorded examples of engagement with private sector profit generating entities and inter alia through contracting of private companies as service providers. Was that then for climate specific services most of the time, or is it more general? Because So it would be interesting to see that the private sector actually goes to the heart of the issues and not whatever is around there. And then I saw your last lessons learned there, that there's still implementation delays. They're unavoidable due to unforeseen circumstances. That is, of course, stating the obvious. It's, I mean, there will always be. But if I look at what you explain under the project cycle performance, I have the impression that there's maybe some more structural things that could be done to avoid those delays. Unforeseen circumstances will always be there, of course, to a higher or lower degree, but is there something that specifically for LDCF and CCF can be done to reduce those delays? Thanks.
Thank you, Josh. Julian, please.
Thank you. Good morning. It's more a question of other things. So unfortunately, where I sit, we don't really speak about the SCCF much. So I think the issue that was raised about the more outreach will be important going forward. But just in relation to the presentation that was made earlier today, the issue of insurance for disaster-related events, which is very common in the Caribbean, especially where June 1 starts a hurricane season for us. I'm wondering, in the SCCF, as part of the adaptation measures to be supported, issues of support to insurance facilities. We have one in our region, the CRIF, and there's been some challenges with that. So it would be good if we could further explore how we can utilize the SCCF for these types of activities going forward, because this is a real issue for countries in the Caribbean. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very pertinent question. Back over to Gustavo and Chizuru, please.
Thank you, Carola. I will try to answer some of the not questions necessarily, but reflect on some of the comments that were made and ask just to respond to some specific questions. It's really music to our ears that we are hearing that there is renewed interest on the part of the Council and the donors in particular to have a concerted effort to disseminate the almost 2 decades of experience of these 2 funds with a view to make them even more effective and more current and more impactful. This is the reason why we were so enthusiastic with the call to renew the strategy, refresh the strategy, look for innovation, look for opportunities to scale what we're doing. And I think the moment is ripe for us to do that. And this year in particular, as was mentioned by a few of you, is particularly momentous to deal with this question of adaptation, because it's in everybody's mind. It's on the donors' mind. It's on the policymakers and the countries. So I think that this would be very important. I would also like to point out that we also need to give some attention to the SCCF. The LDCF, of course, is a very important fund. It addresses the most vulnerable, the ones that are in the front lines of climate change, but SCCF is our road for innovation, and also there are other vulnerable countries that are not LDCs that would benefit from this portfolio, and that's we heard from the keynote speaker this morning how that modest jump starting of that facility is now generating a potentially profitable entity that's dealing with a very important part of financial tools for dealing with climate change adaptation. So I'll say a little bit more on that later during the work program, but I think it's important. The dialogue in terms of the question of how to make it more efficient, avoid some of the breakdowns that occur during execution. One of the things that is starting to happen is that we are, as mentioned, engaging much more with the countries upstream in the project development, particularly in light of this need to improve the pipeline. And actually, instead of kicking the tires, we're actually removing the tires in some cases and replacing it with, something that's more effective. And so it's not just making them more current, but actually making them more fit and more in light with the priorities that are in the strategy. And through this process, we have also become more open to and open up dialogues that are more effective with agencies. That's very helpful during the implementation phase. And through the means of monitoring that were introduced also, we have the ability to see how projects are moving and help whenever needed to address any shortcomings on implementation that may have. Of course, there are unforeseen events that may happen of environmental or political nature, but those are inevitable, as you mentioned. So I will ask you, just to address the remaining questions. Thank you.
Thank you. In response to Joss's question on what has happened with the pipeline projects, we've had several projects in countries after consultations. They have decided not to go with what was in the pipeline and propose something entirely new. Based on consultations and emerging priorities. And there was also the case that's actually in front of you, that the country decided to pull together a multi-trust fund project that would cut across adaptation and other areas of GEF support. So there is, I think, definitely an evolution in the way the LDCF funds are being utilized, even in the countries that have pipeline projects. And there are, of course, cases where more recent pipeline projects were still considered to be a priority. But in that case, we've gone back and requested that them to reference the newest priorities, the policies, as well as the policy documents that have emerged since then. And on the question of duplication, avoiding duplication, what we do is that obviously the pipeline, as well as any proposals that would touch upon, in particular, the NUP preparation, we consult with the GCF, and GCF does the same with us. So there have been instances where the message has been sent back to the country when we know that the NAP support for the preparation has been provided to that particular countries, and we request them to consider or reconsider the utilization of the LDCF resources in light of the recent support provided through the GCF for the same purpose. So there is coordination going on at the country level, but also at the secretariat level to make sure that there is good efforts being put into place so that there is little duplication, if any, on that front. There was, yeah, incorporation of gender, point well taken. We will reflect that in the next progress report and onward. There was a question on whether we're reporting on targets as well as opposed to the actual results. What we present in the AMR is the actuals that are being reported. So we set the target when the projects come to us. When we do the monitoring, the midterm as well as the terminal phase, those are the actuals. And there was another question related to the private sector. And the private sector entities also include procurement and partnership, among other things. So it runs a gamut. And finally, very quickly, on Jamaica's point, Julian's point on support to insurance facilities, we do recognize this is an important issue, and part of the reason that we were very happy to have our keynote speaker today was to highlight that there has been support provided by the SCCF as well as LDCF in this area. And in the current strategy, provision of support through insurance and other risk mitigation measures is actually eligible, and we also put that into the challenge program. So we're hopeful that there will be additional innovative ideas that might be coming to us for support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, both of you, for your responses. With this, and if there are no further comments, I propose that we adopt the two decisions as included in the documents that were discussed just now. If I see no further requests for the floor, both decisions have been adopted. And I'd like to pass the floor to Naoko to introduce agenda item number 6.
Thank you, Carola. So let's move on to the agenda item number 6, which is Joint Work Program of LDCF and SCCF. I'd like to invite Gustavo and the team to present the paper.
Thank you, Naoko. Again, it's a pleasure to introduce the work program for the LDCF and SCCF for this council meeting. This work program, like the GEF Trust Fund, is presented at a moment when the world really faces severe climate extremes and devastating impacts. And of course, vulnerable countries like LDCs and SIDS, they occupy a larger share of the climate change agenda, and they are also very exposed to irreversible damages to the development gains that they have achieved, and they cannot afford. So Naoko mentioned in her opening address how the emerging scientific evidence on the health of the planet is also highlighting the need for adaptation. For instance, IPBES pointed out how climate change adaptation actions are crucial pathways to achieve transformative change for the global environment, and more the lines between what's adaptation and mitigation are starting to be blurred. So we need to really look across funds and across systems and across disciplines for gains on that scale as well. Naoko also mentioned the recent developments, the Global Commission on Adaptation that's setting the stage for a lot of political momentum to this. The G7 meeting in France was also a very important milestone for highlighting adaptation needs. And you heard from Rosina on Tuesday about the work of the Global Commission on Adaptation and how to make the economic case for adaptation more effective. There's the upcoming General Assembly, the Secretary General's Action Summit will be also an important milestone, and that of course connects with the questions that we discussed in the prior session on how to bring more attention to these very, very important and specialized funds, and hopefully get a more support for the growing demand for action by these countries. So it's against this background that the work program is presenting an important milestone for these two funds. This one is the most comprehensive, we think, set of efforts to support immediate adaptation in countries while facilitating initiatives with systemic approaches towards helping transformative impacts in the climate change adaptation and resilience agenda. The work program includes 11 projects that request together $100.61 million in GEF project financing and agency fees. 2 projects, one is in Angola, the other one's in Timor-Leste, are multi-trust fund projects with the GEF Trust Fund. These projects mobilize approximately $510 million of expected co-financing, which means that every dollar provided by the LDCF is matched by $5.6, which come from other sources, including private sector, agencies, and governments. Combined with countries supported in the first work program from December of last year, the LDCF is out providing financing for 20 LDCs. This means that 43% of all eligible LDCs now have been addressed in the first year of operation since we approved the new strategy. These are the countries that are supported, hopefully, if this work program is approved, by the LDCF work program, which includes 14 LDCs. I will just go through them: Angola, Bangladesh, Cambodia, Ethiopia, the Gambia, Kiribati, Lao PDR, Solomon Islands, Timor-Leste, Togo, Tuvalu, Uganda, Vanuatu, and Zambia. All projects that were submitted to the GEF Secretariat and that were technically cleared by the deadline to close the work program they made it into this work program. The projects range from $2.9 million to $17.5 million in the case of projects that are bringing resources from other trust funds. I won't repeat them. You have them in your tables and your report. And one is a multi-trust fund projects. That's $17.5 million. Multi-country projects, yes. So there are some factors for strategic LDCF prioritization that we would like to highlight. Drawing from the model that we accumulated with the GEF Trust Fund work programs that were presented over years to the GEF Council, we were requested to assess and technically clear LDCF proposals based on certain agreed factors that were common to the review, and that would then inform the constitution of the work program and associated resources. For the LDCF, the agreed factors to be considered are strategic prioritization that includes the elements described in the slide, with the alignment with national needs and priorities being the most important factor that we have considered. The assessment by the Secretariat indicated the following. First, all projects confirmed and described alignment with needs and priorities identified in national plans, such as in National Adaptation Plan, National Adaptation Program of Action, the NAPAs, and National Sustainable Development Strategies. As a cohort in this work program, all the 11 projects are addressing 2 strategic priorities identified in the overall strategy, such as opportunities for fostering innovation and investments for technology transfer. The projects present opportunities also to catalyze support, including significant co-financing, also with involvement from the private sector, in alignment with other funding sources, including the Green Climate Fund, as we mentioned before, and also exploring, as the opportunity arises, cases in where multi-trust fund programming designs would be most appropriate. Countries with relatively low level of LDCF support, historically, have been included in this work program in an effort to facilitate access by all countries that have been particularly underserved to date. To conclude here, 7 projects are revised from the GEF 6 pipeline projects, and their current prioritization were confirmed to national consultations and further work, and are presented here in the table. 5 GEF agencies are represented in the June 2019 work program. FAO is represented by 44% of the requested resources, followed by the African Development Bank with 19%. Then ADB is requesting 17% of the amount, and for 1 regional project. In terms of the expected results, the 6 projects cover a wide range of interventions and expected adaptation benefits. The updated LDCF SCCF results architecture, which is presented as an information document to the Council, is developed to have better alignment with the GEF 7 results architecture of the GEF Trust Fund. Specifically, the introduction of core indicators and the provision of meta-information for projects by the agencies are also introduced in the LDCF SCCF results architecture. Contributions of 11 projects in the LDCF program on the new adaptation core indicator are as follows. 2.1 million people as direct beneficiaries, of which 1 million are female. More than 600,000 hectares of land under climate resilient management. 101 policies, plans, or development frameworks that mainstream climate resilience. 58,306 persons with enhanced capacity to identify climate risks and engage in adaptation measures, of which 29,000 are female. These core indicators may in the future contribute to a section of the GEF scorecard that's focused on climate change adaptation. I would like to conclude here by the LDCF presentation by make some observations and early lessons of this new way of putting a pipeline together through work programs. So that's, I think that's very important as we continue to improve on it. The LDCF, we think, is off to a good start in GEF 7 in providing timely support to LDCs. And if this work program is approved, 20 LDCs, as I mentioned, or almost half of all countries will have successfully accessed LDCF resources within the first year of operation. Such early success is due to proactive engagement with countries and agencies, and also important timely donor support with voluntary contributions to the LDCs. Opportunities for integrations with multi-trust fund projects are also being explored. This joint work program includes 3 multi-trust fund projects which are unique to the GEF in enabling integration and synergistic approaches to address multiple environmental concerns, including climate change and resilience. Efforts are also being made to leverage and learn from the global initiatives on climate adaptation. As I mentioned, the Global Commission on Adaptation, the Coalition of Finance Ministers for Adaptation Actions, and through the preparations for the Secretary General Summit that's coming up in September. The GEF Secretariat continued its efforts to hold very extensive consultations with the countries and in the discussions with the agencies. This new strategy and operational improvements introduce significant changes that merited efforts by all throughout the partnership, and these consultations have been key to improving the quality of the pipeline at entry. Coordination with GCF is starting to show some promise. The GEF and the GCF have been involved in something that was baptized as a coordinated engagement, and we started with a pilot in 2018. Following a joint national workshop and consultations, for example, in Lao PDR, a new proposal on climate-smart agriculture has been submitted to the LDCF, and this proposal is informed by the readiness support provided by the GCF and contributed to the requested GCF investments that target landscape approach to bring interventions to scale. So learning from these observations and lessons will help us improve and continue to be a valuable partner to LDCF countries. I'll now move to the SCCF work program, which I'm pleased to present. We have only one project that's requesting 0.97 million or almost $1 million. This project, we have to submit it again. You looked at this in the trust fund decision. Is a multi-trust fund project that combines resources from the GEF Trust Fund and SCCF. The SCCF resources are proposed to address climate change adaptation concerns on a regional scale, while the GEF resources are proposed to support activities to address land degradation in islands in the Caribbean, particularly Antigua and Barbuda, Belize, Grenada, Guyana, Haiti, Jamaica, and St. Lucia at a national level. This overall project mobilizes approximately $3 million in co-financing, which means $3.4 for every dollar that's provided by other sources. This is the reach of the combined project with GEF Trust Fund resources and SCCF resources. And the expected results are also aligned with the strategy that we approved in June. And the strategy further started that it's imperative for the GEF to consider the unique adaptation needs of the SIDS, which this project is now serving, and in parallel with priorities identified by the GEF Trust Fund. Through this project, SIDS will benefit from mainstreaming adaptation into regional and subnational policies and strategies for sustainable management and land degradation neutrality. The contribution of SCCF on the core indicators is on the number of people with enhanced capacity to identify climate risks and engage in adaptation measures, which amounts to 1,000 people, 400 of whom are female. Let me say a few words about how the joint work program of LDCF SCCF as a whole is addressing the strategic goals and objectives of the strategy. So we have 12 projects aiming to support 17 countries in their national efforts to fulfill long-term adaptation goals of the Paris Agreement. 2 strategic objectives set forth for the 2018-22 2022 programming strategy on adaptation are addressed by these projects as a whole. And these are, number one, to reduce vulnerability and increase resilience through innovation and technology transfer. Second, to mainstream adaptation and resilience for systemic impact. Finally, priority themes addressed also include agriculture and water management, land use, food, cities, and climate information systems. Finally, I would like to highlight and thank the work of staff, the timely work of staff. And out of the 10 projects that, 11 projects that they reviewed, one was rated as concur and 10 with minor revisions, so there were no major revision ratings. All of them, therefore, meet expectations from scientific and technical soundness. And the recommendations that these screens provide, as is the norm, have been forwarded to the agencies to be taken into account during the project design. With that, Madam Chair, I finish the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gustavo. Now I would like to open the floor for your comments and questions. Marita, please, followed by Italy and then Kojura. Yeah.
Thank you, Co-Chair. We congratulate the team on the robust work program, and we can support it. I only have one comment, and here you have to bear with me because I'm coming back on gender. I will come back on the next point as well. We welcome the increased focus in the work program, but we think in future work programs we would appreciate more information on how the program meets the requirements on gender responsiveness. This gender disaggregated statistics are welcome, but not enough to explain gender responsiveness. Thank you.
Thank you. I actually about to call to measuring. I don't know why I said Italy, but your flag is up or not yet? Maybe not yet. All right. So may I call on the Kojura?
So thank you, Gustavo, for the presentation of this robust and interesting program. We welcome the proposed distribution of the LECF funds. We also welcome efforts to align the work of the fund with the national adaptation plans and to seek co-financing with GEF and international climate funds. Especially, we note that there has been a successful link to the GCF, which we would like to encourage you to continue working for, and because it will allow to scale up the potentials of the projects. We would also like to ask you or encourage you to look into other potential co-financing sources, particularly from the private sector, which we believe is a very important issue, especially into adaptation financing. We welcome the reference to the GCA process. I had said this before in the work program. And we would like you to give us some additional information on how the LDCF can even more align its activities to what the Adaptation Commission is planning in its work program.
Thank you. May I call on Anal, followed by, I think it's US.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to thank you for the presentation on the work program and to say that we very much support what you've put forward, but I wanted to come in behind what Sweden has said on gender. While we appreciate the efforts that have been made to present gender disaggregated data in terms of the expected results, we believe that we need to make far more progress in this regard. And we were wondering if there are any plans to present a progress report, a report that's similar to the progress report on GEF gender implementation strategy, because it would be helpful for us to understand the extent to which projects in the joint work program for these two funds are implementing the priorities identified in the GEF gender implementation strategy. And we also look forward to more reporting based on the gender equality tagging system that was discussed during the replenishment negotiations. Thank you.
Thank you. May I call on Hannah from the US, followed by Stephanie.
Thank you very much and good morning. I would first like to thank the Secretariat for their work on developing the June 2019 LDCF Scc F Work Program, and the United States appreciates the opportunity to provide comments. We'd also like to thank the country representatives and the implementing agencies for their work on these projects. The United States, in light of its policies for certain development projects in countries whose governments are not addressing trafficking in persons, opposes the Climate Smart Agriculture Program and LAO PDR, and therefore does not join a council decision that would support it. I would request that this statement be reflected in the report of the session. The United States will also submit to the Secretary additional written technical comments on the rest of the work program within the timeframe specified by the LDCF Council procedures. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hannah. May I call on Stephanie, followed by civil society.
Thank you. I'm going to speak French and I'll be brief. We support a work program and we welcome the good balance among countries. Nevertheless, as regards agencies, there is one agency in particular which receives a larger share of the program, but we support the program. Thank you.
Thank you so much. May I call on civil society, followed by Marjorie.
Thank you so much. Unlike Stephanie, I'm not going to be brief because as civil society, we thought to come in right now after all the three documents have been presented. And on that note, let me read it out. The Civil Society Network welcomes with appreciation the pledges and funding commitments towards the Least Developed Countries Fund, and we take note of the progress report on LDCF and SCCF, and also the annual monitoring review and the work program. We acknowledge the satisfactory performance rating of the LDCF projects under implementation and underscore its role of supporting the world's most vulnerable countries to adapt to the effects of climate change. However, we express our concern over the delayed disbursement of the $259 million of project grants as highlighted in the annual monitoring review. The GEF CSO network welcomes the swift operationalization and plans to announce calls for proposals of the challenge program that aim at contributing to the global goal on adaptation for the Paris Agreement. We urge the 26th meeting of the LDCF/SCCF Council to recognize traditional knowledge as an important store of information and practices for enhancing adaptive capacity, which is the key objective of the global goal on adaptation. We encourage the Council to ensure that the challenge program call, in addition to focusing on private adaptation solutions, will also to focus on traditional knowledge, because it is a critical pillar of adaptive capacity for LDCs and small island states. We request the Council to communicate granular and discrete data on gender mainstreaming in projects under implementation. For example, to include children, elderly people, people with disability, among others. We urge the Council to expedite arrangements for disbursement of funds. And we also request not to further delay adaptation efforts of vulnerable countries by approving carried over technically cleared projects of GEF 6, provided that such projects have been updated and resubmitted. And finally, we extend our sincere gratitude to countries making pledges and funding commitment to LDCF and SCCF to continue to do so and ensure no funding gap in the work program. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I want to call on Marceline, followed by Ludwika.
Thank you. We would also like to join others in thanking you for the work program. It looks very good. We, that's to say, Finland and the Netherlands have both contributed to the LDCF, and we welcome the specific role of the GEF in adaptation and especially to integrate adaptation planning. And we agree with colleagues, which has been said before, that it's important to do outreach and show the important work also of the LDCF. We feel the work program is balanced and with good geographical balance. And it's also encouraging to hear that you're cooperating with the GCA and the GCF. And as Cordula has said of Germany, we are interested in hearing more on the cooperation with the GCA. And lastly, I would like to support the comments made on gender by both my colleagues from Canada and Sweden. Thank you.
Thank you. Ludwika, please, followed by Jos.
Thank you very much. Since you say Italy, I feel that I have to say something. But just to support the work program that is very good, is in line with the NAPA, so really the national, my support, but also to join some previous speakers, especially on some points that are very important in my view. The first is the gender, of course, has been said by many others, and the other are the points made by Cordula on the leveraging in private sector. We also think that is critical for adaptation to have a stronger impact on the country. So we think that's really something that needs to be pursued. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jos, please.
Yes, this is, thank you. This is an important work program, so I feel I have to express my full support to it, and thanks for the work that went into it preparing, and then again to recall that the one very positive result of the joint planning programming with the GCF, which I hope is a starting point, and I would make a call upon. We will see some people next week in Bonn in climate meetings, and we're preparing. Well, sort of not there, but there will be guidance to both entities of the operating entities in Chile later this year, and of course there have been calls on both GEF and GCF to cooperate and coordinate, and we don't want to be very repetitive, but now we have a clear example, and maybe we could highlight that and give more precise indications exactly about what. I mean, because calling for coordination and I mean, most of the time it's just general, but now we have something that really seems to work, and so coordination through joint planning and programming, I think, is the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Cordula new flag? Okay. Followed by Peter.
Sorry, just an addition. I forgot to mention before that, as usual, we will send you more detailed comments on the projects in the coming weeks.
Thank you. Peter, please.
Thank you, Naoko. Thank you, Gustavo, for the presentations. I can be incredibly brief. I'm very happy to lend this constituency's voice to those supporting the work programme. It's great to see progress. It's great to see the framing around the results, picking up all of the themes from the GEF 7 outcomes around gender, focus on adaptation, such like. So I'm very pleased to support the work programme and echo the comments by others around the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. So now we will get back to you. So, okay, let me just start by one question posted by, I think it's Cordula, talking about asking that how LDCF SCCF strategy be aligned with a global commission of the adaptation strategy. Actually, I will see it. I see it kind of both ways. Actually, that it's not the one way because we, the GEF, based on the LDCF, based on the last 10 years of the experience, have actually provided a lot of inputs so that that's one way. But we have been also learning a lot from ongoing conversation. The areas particularly, I think we have contributed a lot is it's not in addition to overall framework, but also agriculture and food system, which is a very big chunk in terms of their strategy. And here that as we have already seen a lot of things are happening, and it's really interesting that to see, listening from Bill Gates Foundation talking about an innovation or the technology transfer, and actually we were in conversation with them what kind of things we can do together in that, and actually the sector of food and agriculture, particularly an institution like Bill Gates, which is quite interesting. Another actually the things we have been particularly asked is actually the local community initiated action part, where we also have a lot to provide, but also we are learning a lot from them. Maybe the last example, which was kind of asked by them, is actually this cross-cutting issue of nature-based solution. Here again, that we have a lot to contribute, but as a part of that subsector, we were now part of the discussion and convening several, actually the discussion session here. So we are not only providing some ideas, but also learning from that conversation. So my take as of now is that it's really the both ways. We were providing our own inputs and experience, but we were also learning a lot by working together to come up with a strategy. Actually, this GCA is aiming at a synthesis report and going in the next few months, and yeah, so that that process itself is very, very useful. It's a very organic one, and it goes both ways. I particularly actually interested in enjoying the conversation with the private sector one, and also and the other opportunity of that community group. So with that, I hope that that kind of engagement I will bring back a lot to this table, and also, but also continue to provide our experience going forward. As I mentioned in my opening, it's a kind of new movement because the community really trying to see not only do same thing better and more, but what are the new things and we should do differently. So with that aspiration, joint aspiration, and I think that we could come up with a much more aligned and strategy. So let me actually that ask Gustav and Cheese to come back.
Thank you, Naoko, and thank you for the comments, which we appreciate. I think Naoko covered the piece about the Global Commission on Adaptation. We are pleased also that the engagement with GCF has at least produced one example, and I must recognize it's not easy because the project cycles are different. The way that pipelines are built are quite different. Our portfolio is a more reduced portfolio, but having said that, the ability to be together with countries and agencies always opens up innovative opportunities for this. One of the things that we are, as you know, the COPs, and particularly the climate COP in this arena, since GCF and LDCF and SCF have a role in the financial mechanism, is always a great opportunity and big window for engagement with recipient countries and with agencies and other partners, including potential co-financiers. Before, we had engagements that were almost in isolation, and we are now trying to work with the GCF. Hopefully, I won't advance much more than this because it's still in the planning phase. We might have a joint showing in COP25 so that it becomes kind of a one-stop shop for dialogue across these funds. It still depends on a lot of logistics and a lot of negotiation back and forth. But if this plan pans out, I think it would be quite a good development. So we hope to do that. On the question of gender, thank you for recognizing the ability that we have now to report on gender disaggregated indicators. But this is just, let's say, the one piece of information that is useful, but it's not in any way the only one or the most important one. We have been working with the agencies, of course, in implementing the gender strategy, and they are making sure that women groups are involved in the design and implementation, that they are seeking women's, particularly on the vulnerability side. As we know, they tend to be more vulnerable to climate change and need special assistance in many cases. And also looking at when capacity building and training is delivered, that there is tailored capacity building activities for income generation for particularly women. So that's an important piece. And we will provide eventually, not eventually, but in the gender annual report, a section that describes and reports on these parameters, and hopefully you'll find it a little richer and more able to generate discussion. And that will include gender tags that someone mentioned here. So hopefully that will help. On the, I think it was a point that was raised by Stephanie on concentration of agencies in the work program. Yes, that's correct. But this is one work program out of two, and we hope that this is going to be a little smoother over time. If you can see how resources were in the past, we hope that this will somewhat even out as we enter into the second, third, and fourth year of this strategy. So we'll keep a tab on that. Jess, anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. I think with this discussion, I hope that I would like to invite you to adopt the proposed decision. Thank you so much. So let's move on to the next agenda item, which is a budget. Sorry? Okay, agenda item 7. Okay, I was told no presentation, so paper was distributed to you in advance, so that then maybe you can have just a few words about summarize it, but so.
Thank you very much. The fiscal year 20 administrative budget for the Least Developed Countries Fund and the Special Climate Change Fund is presented to the Council. The document summarizes activities that have been undertaken in the fiscal year 19, supported by these two funds by the GEF Secretariat, STAP, the trustee, and the IEO. It also presents the business plans for fiscal year 20 and the proposed budget with the explanation for the particular request. For the LDCF, the total fiscal year 20 budget request is $1,629,030, comprising of $1,047,030 for the GEF Secretariat, $128,000 for STAP, $385,000 for the trustee, and $69,000 for the GEF IEO. For the Special Climate Change Fund, SCCF, the total fiscal year 20 budget request is $744,640, and this comprises of $480,640 for the GEF Secretariat, $128,000 for STAP, $112,000 for the trustee, and $24,000 for the GEF IEO. The total fiscal year 20 budget request for the LDCF is $95,233, or 66.2% above the fiscal year 19 budget. The increase is due to the budget request from the trustee to account for the investment management costs, which I think we discussed for the GEF Trust Fund budget request, from the IEO, as well as a very modest 0.4% increase from the GEF Secretariat. As for the SCCF, the total budget request is 1.2% less than the fiscal year 19 budget. The reduction is due to the reduced budget request from the GEF Secretariat, Trustee, and the GEF IEO. So we're here to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Marita, please.
Thank you very much for the presentation. We can approve the budget provided that we get an explanation to Table 7 in the document on page 13. If you look at that table, it says that the comparison between FY19 and FY20 budget request for LDCF, the difference is 165.4%. And we don't understand that, but it doesn't correspond to the other IAO document that we will discuss later, because there I understand that there's a 6% increase. Thank you.
Marita, that will be presented later by IEO. Obviously, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, but it says in that document that there's a discrepancy. There's a difference between the two documents. That's why I'm seeking an explanation now before I approve
all
the
right,
budget.
we'll look into that. Thank you. Jos?
Thanks. Let me go back to my points. Yeah, thanks for this budget. We can approve. We note that it's basically flat and there's an increase in cost. You're filling a vacancy, right? And that's an increase in one line. But then we see the intent. Well, the savings in others, and so that's fine. Just a minor question. So you're filling a vacancy, but then I still see in the next paragraph that although the cost for consultants go down, that's not the issue. But we see that the amounts proposed for the consultants is for portfolio management, knowledge management, dissemination support, and then workload with the COP. At least, I thought if you're filling a vacancy, doesn't that take care of at least the portfolio management and the? It looks like more tasks for a fixed staff member than for a consultant. At least portfolio management, knowledge management, and dissemination. I would say occasional things for COPs. I wouldn't know, but and since you're filling a vacancy, I was just wondering how this plays together. But if I can, of course, approve the budget.
Thank you, Jos. Peter, please.
Thank you, Naoko. This is a question. It's not directly related to the budget, but I would think that I certainly, and maybe some other council members, would very briefly like to be either here or be pointed in the direction of one of the outcomes that you've characterised this year, the enhanced communications and outreach, particularly focusing on the unique contributions that the funds are making in climate finance. You know, obviously we have the Secretary General's event coming up. Climate finance is a big issue this year. And it would be very helpful to me to go back to my government to be able to clearly illustrate where these funds are contributing to the broader picture of climate finance. So any information following the meeting that you could make available to council members to direct us in the right direction on that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you so much. On this last point, we are really willing to work on that. It helps us, it helps you. So I think that we really need to focus on this. So thank you so much for your suggestion, and we will do that. I would like to ask my team to respond.
I think we only have one specific question from Joss on the budget, and we'll figure out what the discrepancy is between the budget provided by the IEO and ourselves, but we can figure that after the presentation. That line, Joss, is basically related to the work on the portal, because the portal needs to serve as well the needs, and while the platform is the same, there are certain things that need to be customized for that access to that, and it's a very small amount in relative terms, but it's for that purpose.
Okay, so with the promise of fixing that discrepancy, if there is, may I ask you to adopt the proposed budget? Okay, thank you so much. We will definitely take a look into it. Thank you.
This brings us to the last substantial item of this agenda, which is the LDCF-SCCF Annual Evaluation Report. And this will be introduced by Juha. Juha, can I invite you to come to the table and introduce this agenda item?
Okay, good morning, and it is still morning. It's my great pleasure to introduce the LDCF-SCCF Annual Evaluation Report, which is the first consolidated report between these two funds and has been circulated to you. And this is the main report from the IEO, and it incorporates the formally separate work program and budget document also. It also provides a summary of the LDCF-SCCF special study on completed products conducted to assess all projects conducted so far. We then present our indicative work program for the 4-year period and a multi-annual evaluation budget. The annual budget actually for the evaluation function was already included in the previous decision, but we will still show it to you, and that seems to be in line. And then there will be the management action record also. And I would like to pass the floor to my colleague Anna Wig.
Thank you, Juha. I'm going to start with the special study of completed projects. The special study is a statistical analysis mainly using the program R, and is a similarity index to identify trends in rated variables in completed projects, including outcomes, sustainability, M&E ratings, innovative approaches, country's fragility, and gender considerations. We worked with a University of Maryland graduate student on this study named Daniela Keyi. The full study is available as an information document, and details of the hypotheses testings are in Annex 2. We assessed all 53 projects completed so far. 31 of them are from LDCF and 22 from SCCF. And we also included the 5 terminal evaluations that were submitted to the Evaluation Office in 2018. So overall, the funds have performed well. 81% of LDC projects and 77% of SCCF projects received outcome ratings in the satisfactory range. 73% of SCCF projects had a sustainability rating in the likely range, while 60% of the LDCF projects had a sustainability rating in the likely range. This is comparable to the GEF portfolio. Statistical analysis found that the outcome ratings in the satisfactory range tend to align with sustainability ratings in the likely range. 83% of projects with innovative approaches had outcome ratings in the satisfactory range, while only 57% of non-innovative projects had outcome ratings in the satisfactory range. For innovation, we looked for approaches that are new in the project area or to a specific issue tackled by the project. Statistical analysis found that projects with innovative approaches tend to have higher outcome ratings. And on fragility, it's based on the World Bank definition, and 71% of projects in fragile countries received outcome ratings in the satisfactory range, while 83% of projects in non-fragile countries had outcome ratings in the satisfactory range. It's important to note that all SCCF projects are in non-fragile countries, and 55% of the LDCF portfolio are in fragile countries. That represents 17 projects. And we had some other findings. Statistically, none of the variables were found to be correlated with sustainability, but both M&E implementation ratings and fragility were found to be statistically correlated with project outcome ratings. The analysis shows that projects that maintained or improved on M&E ratings, from M&E design to M&E implementation, had better project outcome ratings overall. Most projects that maintained or improved M&E ratings already had satisfactory M&E at entry. Projects rated gender blind or gender aware at entry tended to maintain or improve their gender rating during the implementation, rating mostly similar or better at completion. The analysis shows that projects that maintained or improved on gender ratings had better project outcome ratings overall. However, these projects also had poorer gender ratings at entry, and since gender was not required to be included at entry, there was room for improvement. In the Management Action Record, we are tracking the June 2016 decision on recommendations of the LDCF program evaluation and the May 2017 decision on the SCCF program evaluation. Adoption of both decisions is rated substantial overall, and the IEO will continue to track adoption of both of these decisions. For the work program, last fiscal year, the two main activities were the preparation of the annual evaluation report and the special study of completed projects. We also included LDCF and SCCF projects in the strategic country cluster evaluations that are ongoing. For the multi-annual work program, the IEO proposes to continue reporting on the performance of the funds by assessing terminal evaluations annually and conducting special studies on topics like multi-trust fund projects and private sector engagement. IEO proposes to update the 2016 LDCF and 2017 SCCF program evaluations. The number of closed projects has increased from 23 to 53 today. We plan to do the LDCF in fiscal year 20 and SCCF in fiscal year 21. OPS will bring in evaluative evidence from annual evaluations reports, special studies, and program evaluations. GEF Trust Fund projects, GEF Trust Fund evaluations for OPS 7 will include LDCF, SSCF projects, and adaptation to climate change. Most of this work is planned for fiscal year 21 and 22. And now that we have a separate evaluation policy, we will update the guidance document on M&E and LDCF, SSCF in the next fiscal year. So in line with the IEO work program and budget for GEF 7, we have prepared a multi-annual budget for the proposed fiscal year 2023 work program. This table presents the estimated budget activity and fiscal year for a total of $340,000. This amount reflects a 6% increase from the previous four-year work plan, which covered fiscal year 16 to 19. And I think there's where the confusion is on the percentage increase. We estimate that the approved budget for last year, fiscal year 19, of $52,000 will be fully used by the end of this fiscal year. And we estimate that $93,000 will cover the activities planned for fiscal year 22.
Okay, thank you, Anna. And let me just say a couple of points of clarification maybe there. So we, as the IEO, we cover both the GEF Trust Fund as well as the LDCF and SCCF, and as Anna has indicated, there is overlap between these programs. While we focus specifically on LDCF and SCCF, we also cross-fertilize our evaluations, so these will also contribute to the adaptation sections of the comprehensive evaluation that we are going to be preparing and so forth. And the other thing is that that came up yesterday, this innovation or the explicit mention of these post-completion evaluations. So we are considering how we can feature them also in this LDCF and SCCF thing. Is it appropriate to discuss the decision now? And actually, my understanding is actually that the budget for the next year was already incorporated in the previous budget discussion. So in this case, we would basically seek your approval of this document.
Thank you very much for the presentations. Are there any comments or questions from the side of the Council? I see Marita and Cordula. Marita first, please.
Thank you. We welcome the report and the new format, and we can approve the proposed four-year budget for the IAO, but would appreciate the clarification on why the budget request is 6% higher for the four-year period, given that we have requested both the GEF and the LDCF to explore further cost savings if possible. So if you could give us some further clarification on that. And then I would like to come back on gender, actually. I'm sorry about that, but I think that we in addition to doing further work, I think it would be useful if the IAO could maybe include an assessment on how integration of gender responsiveness have evolved during the reporting period in these evaluation reports, and using the gender strategy and guidelines as a point of departure. We think it would also be useful if you could report on measures that has been taken during the period to improve sustainability, and then that you can assess that in the report on what has happened in that area, given the discussion we had yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you, Marita. Next is Cordula, followed by Anna, Marjolein, and Peter. Encouraging all of you to be as succinct as you can be.
Okay, well, thank you, Juha, and your team for the interesting report. We very much welcome the special study on the completed projects and take note of its findings. We already also see that the report emphasizes the necessity to take further action on fostering project sustainability. which is an issue we already raised within the GEF meeting, and therefore implementing the lessons learned from your evaluations. We welcome the IEO's indicative work program for the coming years, and appreciate the strong alignment with the GEF programming strategy on adaptation. We would also like to encourage efforts to report on additional topics, especially on the multi-trust fund projects, which is a new instrument, and the engagement with the private sector. Like Marita, well, we take note of the 6% increase and would like to have information then on how you want to go about more cost-cutting measures in your preparation of the next work program.
Thank you so much. Cordula, Anna, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you very much for the report that you've put out, but also to highlight the issue of gender again as well. I very much support the comments made by Sweden, requesting more analysis on the integration of gender responsiveness. I also had a question of clarification on the results that were reported on in this report. It wasn't clear to me why projects that were rated gender sensitive or gender mainstreamed upon entry tended to decline in those ratings by completion. I think it would be interesting to understand the results a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you. Anna, Marjolein, and then Peter.
Thank you. I shall keep it short. I was actually struck by one sentence in the report that the GEF doesn't have a definition of fragility in an operational context, nor policy or special procedure for working in fragile states. And I was, as some of the LDCs are fragile states, I was just wondering how the GEF cooperates risks associated with fragility in the project documents.
Thank you for that. Peter, please.
Thank you, Carola, and thank you, IEO, for that report. My point is short. It relates to the points also made by Marita and Cordula on sustainability, and it was simply to request that when the Secretariat follows up to the decision that we took under Agenda Item 16 on further work on sustainability at the meeting yesterday, looking at key factors to influence the sustainability of GEF projects, could the interpretation of GEF projects also include those relating to SCCF and LDCF, and it help us inform our thinking on sustainability of SCCF and LDCF projects too? Thank you.
That's a fair point. Please, Julian, over to you.
Okay, thanks very much for these comments. Let me start with the budget question, which is of course a perfectly legitimate question, and we have IEO has committed fully to the replenishment discussions on related to the capital increase package and so forth. So how we have how we have suggested to do this both in our regular work program and this work program is that we work within the overall multi-year budgetary framework that has been approved, but we will consider cost savings measures as appropriate, and we'll report afterwards at every year on the actual costs, and hopefully we will be able to report some savings. The simple explanation to why there is an increase is what Anna said, that the number of projects has, and completed projects has increased already from 23 to 53, so more than doubled, and we assume obviously that every year there will be new projects that will be completed, and we analyze them one by one. We read the terminal evaluation reports and do a systematic analysis of them, so it takes some resources, but hopefully we'll be able to address some of these issues. The definition of fragility is an interesting thing, but it's obviously also a very political issue, and the UN in general has shied away from these issues. So when we have looked at it, we have used the World Bank definition, and we have another evaluation that we are starting, or have started actually, and that is exactly trying to answer your question, is that whether the situations, the specific situations which may be fragile, are taken into account in project designs and implementation. I take a note of the specific interests on issues related to gender responsiveness, sustainability, the multi-trust fund projects, and the private sector involvement, which we will definitely, to our ability, incorporate into the evaluation work that we have, and both in terms of the annual evaluation reviews of the terminal evaluations, but also then the studies and the 2 program evaluations that we have planned. There was this Anna's question about the gender ratings. I don't know if Anna will be able to shed some light on these trends.
Thank you, Juha. For the question from Canada, I'm not sure exactly which phrase or what sentence you're referring to. Maybe we can talk bilaterally after all. But we have to keep in mind this study of 53 projects. It's a very small sample, and in some of the analysis, the data could be skewed depending on how many projects we have. Also on the gender rating, a lot of these projects were designed before the new gender policy, and what we have done is we have rated the projects at entry and at the end of the projects. So there are things that the evaluation office is doing, and we use the same type of rating in the program evaluations of the LDCF and the SSCF. And in past annual evaluation reports, we have also used the same ratings and looked at trends. So I think in general, the statistical analysis has seen positive correlations, but they're very weak correlations, mainly because of the size of the samples.
Thank you. I think there was one question for Gustavo to answer on project design.
Thank you. Marjorie, your question about how we deal with fragile states, just like Juha mentioned, in GEF 7 we are using the World Bank list category of fragile countries and fragile situations, which is the document is publicly available, so everyone can refer to that. We also describe this in a little bit more detail in the information document on our results framework that was distributed in the December council meeting, the last council meeting. So there is some more details there. If you have any additional questions, I can respond. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see there's one additional question from Marita.
Thank you. No, it's not a question. I just want to make a plea. When we are talking about gender, it's about men and women, boys and girls. So that I hope that we stop talking about it as just a woman's issue or a women's issue. Thank you.
That is well heard. Thank you very much. If there are no further comments, I'd like to propose that we adopt a draft decision contained in the document on the annual evaluation report. And if that is the case, we can move to any other business. I don't know if there's anything to raise under this point. No? Then I propose we move to the adoption of the joint summary of the chairs
of the GEF Trust Fund.
Of the GEF Trust Fund.
So we are now, so we are now distributing a joint summary of chairs, co-chairs that then at your table. It is actually that then a decision, collection of the decision from last 2 days at GEF Main Trust Fund. That then I think we need maybe a few moments for you to take a look at it, and the joint this summary of the joint decision document of LDCF SCCF is actually now coming, but first I think we want to try address the main trust fund first.
Dear colleagues, I hope you've found some time to go through the document and look for your favorite decisions and conclusions and to see if they're included correctly. As usual, we will now go through the document mostly in a paragraph-by-paragraph way. Where this is opportune, we will cluster paragraphs, and I will do that from the beginning, clustering paragraph 1 to 5, stating the obvious on the opening of the meeting. I assume everyone is in agreement with those paragraphs. Then we can move on to the section with decisions approved. Any comments on paragraph 7, policy on monitoring? No, that's only I see no one raising her or his flag. We move on to paragraph number 8, report on the working group on the GEF partnership, where we adopted the decision. Cordula, please, you have the floor.
Sorry, I'm coming back to point 5. I just saw that the name of Ms. Sala is not written properly.
Sorry. We'll strike out one E in her last name. It's not Saler, but Saler. We will correct that.
And there is an E too much in the Gertrud, which is without E in the end.
2 is off.
Someone who typed this loved the letter E. Any comments on paragraph 8? I see Aparna.
So, Chair, I wanted to point out that Annex 1 referred to here seems to be a work program or something. So there is a reference to Annex 1 in paragraph 7 and subsequently also in paragraph 9, but 7. But here Annex 1 is actually the budget and special initiative. Annex 1.
Was Annex
1. Oh, this document.
Yeah.
And this Annex 1?
Okay, that's we're not there yet.
Okay. Thank you, he has clarified.
Thank you, Aparna and William.
Okay.
There are no further comments on para 7 and 8. We can move on to paragraph 9 on possible non-compliance with ESG. Any comments to be made?
Yeah, but that's the Annex 1 of the document. It's not the Annex 1 of.
Just for clarity, the mention of Annex 1 refers to Annex 1 of the document C5507 Rev 1 and not to Annex 1 of this joint summary. We'll clarify that by putting as set out in Annex 1 of this document. Referring
to write that document.
Referring back to document C55.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Moving on to paragraph 10, the business plan and corporate budget for fiscal year 20. Any comments to be made to this paragraph? Cordula, please.
I'm referring, I lifted my flag before, I'm referring to the paragraph 9. The changes we decided upon last night, where and when would we find them?
They have been included in the document itself.
Okay.
That's why it's Rep 01.
You will not see the document as it stands now.
Is this already on the website?
It's already published on the website.
On website, yeah.
Para 10, any questions, remarks? Cordula, unless you put your plate down, I'll give you the floor again. We move on to para 11, status of agencies' compliance with minimum requirement on AML and CFT. Then on para 12, here it's good to mention, I think, that a Ref 2 of the document will be published on the website, and that will take into account what's mentioned under paragraph 13, which is the line on impact assessment and the recommendation on scaling up. So this will be included in Ref 2 that will be published. Next is para 13, has been clarified. Para 14, there we have a similar remark. We agreed that the IEO will conduct selected post-compliance evaluations and that it will be part of the evaluations policy, and this will be, it has been included in Ref 1, that's already on the website. Then we move on to para 15, where I presume there are no remarks. Then the next section is on the work program and runs all the way from para 16 to 64. This shouldn't contain any surprises. If there are any remarks to be made, please do. If not, we continue. Cordula, please.
Again, the question, where do we find our amendments from yesterday about the impact programs and the report that we requested with the story in it?
This is paragraph 65.
Para 65, any further remarks? If not, 66, relations with the conventions and other international institutions. 67, the MOU with the Minamata Convention. 68, the work on sustainability or durability of GEF projects and programs. And then para 69, the report of the Selection and Review Committee. On the selection of a new CEO, and para 70 on the performance evaluations for Naoko and Yua and their goals for fiscal year 20. And then finally, paras 71 and 72. With this, we've gone through the document. Thank you very much. I hope you've all received also the joint summary of the chairs.
Sorry,
Aparna, please.
Thank you, Carola. For the joint summary, several of the issues that were discussed and debated were to be reflected in the highlights. So will the highlights be circulated for comments before finalization?
We normally publish them, and then we put them on the website, and when any council member or alternate wants something, they contact us. If you'd rather, I can circulate it to first with it. But normally it's posted, and then when comments come in, we fix whatever needs to be fixed.
So normally when do we keep looking at the website, or?
All right. So in this case, just to make sure, we'll send it round first. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Good.
Thank you.
That I think is highly appreciated. Thank you, William. I have in front of me a few sheets of paper that are actually still warm. It's the joint summary of the chairs on the LDCF-SCCF meeting. We'll do the same as with the other document. We cluster paras 1 to 3. Any remarks? Para 4, the keynote.
Lauren has asked for it.
Lauren, please.
I'm really sorry to have to get back to the other summary of the chairs. We can't find the revised evaluation policy on the website that's mentioned in the document here. Thank you.
It's not up yet, but they're preparing the document. Yeah, the evaluation office is preparing the new document.
I'm sure, Lauren, should you be unhappy about it, then please do reach out. Back to the LDCF-SCCF. Para 4, the keynote. Para 5, the progress report. Para 6, the annual monitoring review. Paras 7 to 13, the work program. Para 14, the budget. And para 15, the annual evaluation report and annual budget for the IEO. Para 16 and 17, it writes 14, but it should be 17. Thank you all very much.
Marita?
Thank you. I just have a question. Where will all the comments that we have made, Canada and others made on gender, will they be reflected in the highlights, or how? Okay.
Peter and then Ben.
Thank you, Carola. One very small point just for maybe the Secretariat to consider. I often find the references to the fall meeting confusing, possibly because the fall in the Southern Hemisphere is spring. But I think for simplicity's sake, and to reflect the fact that our second meeting of the year has, for last year, this year, and expected next year, occurring in December, for simplicity, if we maybe think about referring simply to the 57th meeting, the 58th meeting, etc. I'm not sure the utility of spring and fall as a descriptor for the meetings is relevant. And as this will be the last time I'll be on the microphone, I expect just to thank you very much to our co-chairs.
Thank you, Peter. That makes sense. It's much more inclusive to take into account that fall and spring are the other way around in some countries. Ben, please.
Sorry. As someone who says autumn, I also think that's a good point from Peter. So just my point was just in terms of the paragraph 9, it talks about the annex, and which I just want to just clarify whether, I think you said that that was going to be published on the website, or maybe it was already published on the website. We couldn't find that on the website yet, so just great if you clarify if it's on there, and if it is on there, which paragraphs on the website we're talking about. Thank you.
You're referring to paragraph 9 of the GEF Council, right?
Sorry, yes.
Yeah, okay. Yes. Aparna brought that up also. Annex 1 is the Annex 1 of GC 5507 Rev 01. So we're just going to extend that sentence to make sure that we're referring back to that document. Okay, as set out in Annex 1 of that document, being 5507 Rev 01.
So,
Aparna, you wanted the floor?
just to say that even in para 7, William, contained in Annex 1 of this document, I think it may be clearer if we say Annex 1 of that document. That may be helpful, yes.
Thank you. This then concludes the work on the joint summary.
Okay, so I think miraculously, I think we were now closing this last 3 days or 2.5 days GEF Main Trust Fund and also LDCF, SCCF sessions. So I would like to say a few words, and I'm sure that the Carola could also share her feeling, but maybe let me just start. To us that this council is a kind of landmark council because that this is a real start of the GEF 7, and we presented a quite important work program which actually realized a lot of the policy as well as the vision of the GEF 7, which actually creates a lot of good excitement, but also, you know, that in response to that, the very large, the loud call from the science, so that we were actually very excited about it. So the first point is that I still remained very, very excited about it. But the second point, which I really would like to share with you, is that how much I appreciated this council. Fundamentally, this is a very, very constructive, very collaborative, and very functional, the council based on a lot of trust, and it's such a pleasure to work with you. And why I am saying this at this last minute on in closing, actually, I found last 2 days and a half is a bit of challenging. I thought it was much easier council, but it turned out to be one of the very difficult council. And during the last 2 days and a half, there are moments, actually personally, kind of thinking that why you know, this question be asked, or why I need to push back, or why I need to be pushed back. And there are moments I'm asking that, okay, what do you really mean by that? or sometimes you really ask that, what do I mean by that? So that, but thinking about it, that I have two thoughts about it. It's actually really nice to have that kind of atmosphere that we can very honestly ask that question without really being worried or that being threatened. So I actually see this kind of atmosphere of very professional but honest and frank exchange is really our asset. I think we have been creating this kind of very valuable space maybe for the last few years, and I really appreciated it. But the secondary, why we have a little challenging exchange for the last 2 days, in my view, this reflects the fact that we were entering into a kind of new phase of GEF, that the GEF 7 program requires a kind of new way of doing business, that we were trying to implement the several actually impact program or programmatic approach, which is actually that require that very careful kind of processing, so that I hear a lot about the transparency, that why that we are in this situation, and we are trying to understand
understand, I personally trying to understand what you are really looking for, and I'm very, very slowly come to understand that why we are in this situation. We at the GEF is 24/7 in doing this. So to us, something very kind of natural may not be really natural to you. So that we have this bit of distance that by entering into the new phase of GEF, or GEF implementation and the strategy and the implementation. So it really made me think that we that GEF 6 side really needs a very kind of careful that approach and trying to really understand what is the need from your side, so that we can make your job much easier, so that you can make the informed decision without much struggling. So that is really the reflection of the last 2 days and a half. But in a nutshell, this is a kind of maybe inevitable that challenge we need to go together and overcome, because I still believe that GEF 7 is a very good strategy. It's really trying to deploy our GEF's strengths in a very innovative way. But that because it requires also a bit of a new way of doing business, it is a collaboration, but also a lot of competition, new thinking, and the new deployment, so a new collaboration, new partners. So I actually realized that I on my side have to be a little bit more kind of thoughtful to provide much better information on your side, so that next time we could avoid questions about the process-related question, the selection-related question, why we were in this situation kind of question. So that is something I realized last 3 days. But again, our commitment is here, and I think it's really important for us not to lose this very beautiful space for us, both sides, to be very honest and frank and professional. And we are really trying to create something very new, so that I hope that we can continue to strengthen our trust among us, and we can go and move and further and deeper and with as much of strength. So that is my reflection of the last 3 days. But I remain excited, I remain committed. I'm very proud of having this council and working together. And finally, I really would like to thank Carola that really doing this and chairing so beautifully, and really appreciating a lot of help extended by you. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Naoko, for these truly inspiring words. All I wanted to do is to express a big word of thanks, I'm sure on behalf of all of us, to Naoko, William, and everyone in the GEF and the IEO and the staff for doing all the work that has gone into this meeting and to all the preparatory work. Thank you all so very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Now you can blame me. Now you can blame me. But I was to thank, first of all, Carola for a very good co-chairmanship. I'm impressed with Naoko's last thoughts. I have been missing that. And I am very happy that you came to that insight. More transparency, more communication, more involvement of everybody in this family. We've had it better, we've had it worse. But I think we're on a good track hearing you. I'm retiring with a much eased mind than before. But I know that in the overwhelming homage of yesterday, I forgot to thank people. I mean, everybody thanked me, but I mean, I had to start learning. The first 2 years of my 23 years here, I didn't open my mouth. Frankly, because I didn't understand. I came from a completely different background. I was a field archaeologist, for those who didn't know, who all of a sudden got dumped in the international environmental arena. That's facts. 18 years in South America. So I had to learn a lot, and I had learned a lot from everybody here. So I want to thank everybody, those who are here, and of course all those who are not here anymore because they retired. Some are not even amongst us anymore, but especially the Secretariat, because we've always had a very important supporting role in my job in the conventions. The staff with all the famous important knowledge and support, the trustee, the number crunchers and so which we basically interact with when it's replenishment, the CSOs who come always with a refreshing, many times with a refreshing point of view, the agencies which are our hands and feet in the field, and without them we can't do anything, the fellow council members of course. So of course I will miss this. I have other plans, yes, but of course you can't forget 23 years of your life. So I will miss first of all the colleagues, of course, maybe a bit less the job or the workloads especially. But I will always have fond memories to all the work we did here together, and all the best for the future. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Safe trip back.
Please remember to leave your lanyards either on the table or in the box, the basket outside. And the Knowledge Management Advisory Group meets at 3, MC2 800, with presentations from NASA, the European Space Agency, STAP, etc. And lunches for everybody in the atrium. Thank you very much.